Tonight on Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial. The courtroom may have been quiet today, but there's still plenty to talk about. Thank you for being with us. I'm Glenn Jones.
I'm JC Monahan. So tonight we look at how some of the family members of both Reed and John O'Keefe are dealing with the testimony.
Plus, we're zooming in on the judge at the center of it all. Why did the defense team want her removed from the case? We'll dig into that.
If you're just joining us, though, let's just get you up to speed quickly. The trial just began Monday. Karen Reed, of course, accused of hitting her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her SUV and leaving him to die in the cold. So far, you see the 6 witnesses that have taken the stand, which includes John O'Keefe's brother and sister-in-law. And on Monday, they shared details of O'Keefe's life and his relationship with Reed.
They dated very briefly in 2004. They reconnected. I believe my brother reached out to her in March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. I think he reached out to her via Facebook Messenger and then, text.
What, if anything, were you aware of as far as fights, arguments, issues, anything like that?
I think normal relationship, the stuff everyone goes through. We would say how well we got along, and she would say if they ever broke up, she hoped that she and I would stay friends.
We've also heard from 2 police officers and 2 firefighters, first on the scene after O'Keefe's body was found outside in the snow. They laid out what they remembered of that morning. The defense was quick to raise doubts about the investigation, starting with errors found in some of the initial police documents.
So none of the initial police reports, not the dispatch log, not your police report, apparently not Sergeant Good's, list 34 Fairview Road as the actual location where you responded that morning, correct?
As far as I know, yes. Yes, sir.
Was there an effort on your part or anybody else's, to your knowledge, to mask the actual address of Brian Albert's house as 34 Fairview Road?
No.
Okay, so far each witness has shed some light on this, what we call divisive case. But of course, now there leads to more questions about what happened the night that John O'Keefe was killed.
Right. The trial should help us get to the truth. But right now, what happened remains unclear. And that uncertainty has upended the lives of so many people sitting right in the courtroom hoping for answers. Our Kirsten Glavin introduces us to a few of those people.
It's a case that's become a national spectacle.
A lot of people think things aren't adding up.
Karen Reed's being framed.
It could be any one of us.
Both outside and inside the courtroom.
Karen Reed was framed.
But at its core, the Karen Reed murder trial and death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe is simply a tragedy.
It's hell. I never thought we'd be in this position.
For Reed's family, court has already taken its toll just 2 days into testimony.
If you've been in that courtroom and if you've listened, it's difficult not to feel the same way I feel and my family feels.
But this trial comes after a long 2-year journey, with a father holding on to the hope and belief that his daughter is innocent.
She's an incredible daughter. I'm just a proud father of Karen Reed.
John O'Keefe's family also seeking justice. O'Keefe was just 46 years old when his life was cut short in January of 2022. His family, first responders, and more attending his funeral that year.
Definitely one of the worst weeks of our life. I don't know, I just can only pray that my family gets the answers they need.
O'Keefe was also a father figure after his sister passed away from an aggressive brain tumor.
My brother, he took on responsibility of raising our niece and nephew.
First on the stand Monday, Paul O'Keefe having to relive the day he found out his brother had died, finding the courage to describe seeing him for the first time in the hospital.
I mean, he was pretty banged up. He had his eyes had swelled up.
O'Keefe's sister-in-law, Erin, tearfully remembering that morning.
I woke up to my husband on the phone with his mother saying he's going to be okay, he's going to be okay.
2 families hoping a jury can find justice as this trial runs its course.
It is only the jury, in other words, you folks, who can decide whether the prosecution has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Kirsten is now joining us in studio. Kirsten, you've been following this trial since jury selection. Now here we are with testimony. You've been outside the courthouse, too, where we've seen so many Karen Read supporters, some who are not. Can you just talk about the atmosphere? Has it changed from jury selection to trial now that we're hearing from some of these witnesses?
It certainly has. So during jury selection, there was obviously a lot of interest, especially for the people who are free Karen Read all the way. They've been out there since day one, even during jury selection. But now that testimony has really started, even just Monday, the first day of opening statements, we saw networks out there for the first time. Court TV is pooled, so you have people there getting really involved in this case for the first time. So that's been really interesting. And those free Karen Read supporters that we've seen, there has been a group there the whole time, but there's certainly a little bit more energy there, I think, as well, specifically Monday of this week, now that testimony's really gotten going.
You know, we noticed as you were walking out of the courthouse, Karen Read was walking out as well, and you posed a question to her. I think some of us were a little bit surprised that she answered it because it was about finding John O'Keefe that early morning hour. Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, only because she's been very media friendly from the get-go. I asked her a question on Monday and she answered me. It was brief, but she did. And she has a certain demeanor, I think, as well when she's leaving court. She smiles, she'll wave to her supporters out there. She'll talk if you ask her a question. It might not be, you know, a long explanation. I believe I asked her a specific question, and it was about some of the testimony we heard from several of the first responders out there saying, you know, I hit him. It was in that vein.
Right.
And she just said no. But
she never said that. That was the debate on the stand. Did she say it? Did she not say it?
And she gave a flat no. So she did acknowledge that question. And her attorneys have been the same. If you ask them a question, they'll acknowledge you, they'll answer, they're a little bit more talkative. But this is different than what we've seen in other high-profile cases, because you don't always get an answer. You certainly don't get people taking their time to walk to their vehicles and actually speak with you and entertain you.
No, it's been very chatty. It's very surprisingly chatty on the way out.
But also kind of peaceful in a way as well. Everyone's there trying to ask questions, but it's not a hostile environment at all. And, you know, while she's walking, again, like I mentioned, she's waving to some of her supporters out there that are cheering her on. So it's a very interesting dynamic,
especially because this is a murder trial. So, you know, usually you would expect more weight on the shoulders, you know, when someone is walking in.
Yeah, you have a woman who is fighting for her life in this trial, right? So it is a very interesting dynamic, just comparatively to other cases that we've seen.
We know you're going to be covering it all for us. 6 to 8 weeks this trial is supposed to last.
And I think it will last that long.
Okay.
Based on
pace yourself.
Yes.
All right. Glenn, back to you.
Kirsten, JC, thank you. While we're talking about the people involved in this trial, it's important we introduce you to the person presiding from the bench. Judge Beverly Cannone, while she won't have a direct say in the verdict, she is in charge of the courtroom, and she's no stranger to high-profile cases. Karen Read's defense team worked hard to get Judge Beverly Cannone thrown off the case, citing a conflict of interest. She was having none of it.
I reject the notion that untrue and unsubstantiated rumors spread on the internet can force a judge to recuse herself from a case.
According to court filings, the defense claimed the judge was connected to Sean McCabe, the brother-in-law of Jennifer McCabe. Jennifer is best known for this Google search before John O'Keefe's body was found. The defense recusal motion leaned on an affidavit from Aidan Kearney, the blogger known as Turtle Boy. He claimed to have proof of a connection between the judge and the McCabe family because on Facebook, Sean referred to her as Auntie Bev and knew about her seaside cottage on the Cape. From the bench, Judge Cannone dismissed it all.
And doesn't that underscore the fact that anybody can say or write anything and try to make it the basis of a motion to recuse? And I think it points out that this motion to recuse is not credible.
Beverly Cannone went to UMass Amherst and New England Law, spent years as a public defender before ascending to the Superior Court bench 10 years ago on an appointment from Governor Deval Patrick. Recently, she presided over the Emmanuel Lopes double murder trial. twice and is expected to be in charge of the Brian Walsh murder trial, too. We talked to a defense attorney who described a Cannone courtroom as a place of fairness.
She's a very straightforward judge. She's great. She's not going to let a lot of nonsense fly in her courtroom, which is good because you want things to move along. Attorneys have their job, judges have their job, and I think so far everyone's been doing a really good job at that.
Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, the prosecution of Karen Reed will be at the center of Judge Cannone's Superior Court docket, trying to balance high interest from the media, heightened tensions from the public, and the highest possible stakes, finding justice for a murdered police officer. Back in studio now with us tonight is Michael Coyne, Dean at the Massachusetts School of Law, and that was one of your former students in that story there.
Jetta,
it was a pleasure to meet her as well. All right, we want your help understanding the charges that Karen Reed is facing in this trial and whether maybe she's been overcharged. The most serious one that she faces is second-degree murder. So what does the prosecutor have to prove in order to get a guilty verdict on that charge from the jury?
Second-degree murder requires intent. It requires malice aforethought. If you can satisfy that, you'll get a second-degree murder charge conviction from the jury. The problem is the intent. And malice aforethought doesn't necessarily have to be as we think about it, the black heart, the planning, the premeditation, and all of that. It could be, and this would be a problem for her, it can be if you act grossly reckless. And her activities that night could be considered grossly reckless if, in fact, the prosecution starts to hammer home the theme that they were drinking, they were dangerously driving, and ultimately someone met their death. And that could be grossly reckless. But I think it's a very tough burden that they have. Manslaughter by motor vehicle, which is the lower charge that she faces, if her activities were wanton and reckless. That now it's still a reckless standard, but again, depending on what the blood alcohol content comes back and what other activities we can look at they engaged in that night, you may well be able to satisfy that, but I still think it's a terrible difficult burden for the prosecution in this case, but that's the charge that I think would be more appropriate. I do not see a second-degree murder charge coming back, certainly with a conviction by the jury.
Well, you helped just so much in defining that, because that is one thing I haven't heard this whole time, which is what was the motive? If you're going to go for second-degree murder, what was it? And so so recklessness.
Grossly reckless.
Grossly reckless would be the definition. And then for manslaughter, the sentencings must be quite different.
Greatly different.
So what would be the max? You don't think second degree is winnable. So let's go with manslaughter. What would be the maximum sentence?
Still, each of the charges, actually, even the leaving the scene having caused the death while intoxicated, each of them has a mandatory minimum sentence. The motor vehicle manslaughter would still require a 5-year mandatory sentence and a loss of license for a significant period of time. The top charge, the murder charge with respect to second-degree murder, that carries a life in prison sentence and not eligible for parole for at least 15 years. So if, in fact, the government can secure a conviction on that count, it is a significant sentence.
Well, that's huge. I mean, 5 years compared to life in prison, there's no comparison.
Yeah, Kirsten is right. She really is fighting for her life here. Let's talk about expert testimony. We expect to see a lot of it in this trial, but I know that some of the conclusions of the experts will differ. What does the jury do when they hear competing opinions from people who are very qualified?
And they will hear competing
and scientific
opinions.
Ones. Can I just jump in? So ones that where we're, usually it's very cut and dry, math, weather, whatever it is, but not in this case.
Well, experts, remember, are paid witnesses for the most part. The government will have the coroner, but she's still being paid by the government. So when lawyers hire experts, they want to know that they will support their position in the case. And yes, they have physics backgrounds and accident reconstruction, mathematics. It's a science, the accident reconstruction here. And the court will have to determine two things. Will their testimony aid the jury's understanding of the event? And that's the answer to that question is almost undoubtedly yes. The second part of it will be, are they sufficiently qualified by background, education, experience, and training such that they will be able to provide the jury information to arrive at their conclusion. Some of the experts may make that cut, some of them will not. Ultimately, then the jury has to weigh which experts they choose to follow with respect to whether that car impacted the decedent.
Okay.
Sounds like it could be a tough call.
You're going to come back later this half hour, so don't go anywhere, please. Stay right there.
Far.
And that's still ahead on Canton Confidential. Our conversation continues with what's next in the trial.
But first, from YouTube to social media, where you can find complete testimony and highlights from the courtroom. That's next. Welcome back. Since day one of jury selection, NBC 10 Boston has been your source for every new development.
Yeah, we want to cover this case differently. Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, is a chance for us to take a deep dive with expert analysis here at 7. We're also bringing you all the testimony in its entirety online, so we have the most complete coverage no matter which platform you choose. Here's Matt Fortin with more.
We have a lot of different formats for you, whether you want to follow along live or get caught up after the fact. First off, you can watch the proceedings of Reed's trial live as they happen on NECN or on our website and mobile app. You can also watch along on our streaming channels on Roku, Samsung TV, Peacock, and more. And True Crime Junkies, if you still can't get enough, we also have a podcast. You can listen to that anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're not able to tune in during the day, we are giving you great content on our website, NBC10Boston.com, a recap of Canton Confidential, and you can also rewatch the trial live stream. There's a whole page, in fact, on our site dedicated to the Karen Reed case. You'll find it on our trending bar at the top of our site here. All you have to do is hit Karen Reed trial, and you'll find all of our coverage and our podcast episodes right here on this page laid out for you. A couple of stories in particular that I do want to highlight for you that you may find useful. Look up NBC Boston Karen Reed timeline, and you'll find this story outlining the important dates from John O'Keefe's death to the trial itself. Type in NBC Boston Karen Reed Who's Who for a complete guide to the big names you'll hear during the trial, including witnesses who are expected to take the stand, as well as how many of the key players are connected. You can also follow us on Instagram for a 60-second recap each trial day, and all of this is also on our YouTube page. Our team is tracking it all for you, so be sure to keep an eye out for an interactive chart we are working on right now showing you the connections linking the people involved in this trial. I'm Matt Fortin, back to you.
Well, when we said gavel to gavel, we weren't kidding. No. After the break, Michael Coyne will join us once again here at the desk to talk about what we've seen so far in court.
We're back in just a moment. We are back with Michael Coyne, our legal expert. Michael, we were just talking about we've only gotten through 6 witnesses so far. Now, granted, we've only had 2 days of testimony, but there are a lot of people still to hear from. Do you have any idea who the prosecution may put on the stand next?
I think it may be additional medical information as to what happened at the hospital when his body was brought there and the blood draws were taken from both him and the defendant. That would start to open the door to some of the scientific evidence that may help the government here. I would not be surprised. I don't see the children as coming on that quickly, but that it would be difficult to cross-examine them, so the government may want to put them in so that the defendant doesn't keep making inroads here. The cross-examinations have been pretty effective so far.
Let's talk about the children a little bit more, because I know the prosecution would hope to humanize the victim in this case by bringing the kids up. And in this case, it is children who lost both their parents and were being raised by John O'Keefe. What perspective do you expect, and how sensitive do you need to be in the courtroom given the age of these witnesses?
Incredibly so. I mean, that's why there is no good cross-examination of these children.
There can't be a cross-examination.
Well, there can be. They may well try to, again, elicit that the defendant was a caregiver to them, that she showed them love and affection, took them to school, the types of things that a substitute parent would do for them to try and humanize her. And that's why you've got to be careful. But also, you've got to remember, these are children of a very tender age who have been through unbelievable tragedy. So the fact is, the government may postpone that, and the defendant may try to minimize that as well. There's not a lot to be gained there other than this point about a fight in Aruba at one point or other over a bad New Year's. So I don't see that. I think the medical information might be the best place for the prosecution to move next. The fact is, some of those tests and some of that information should be less things to fight about. The coroner's argument, and that is still to come as well.
All right.
Thank you, Michael Coyne. We'll be right back.
Thank you for joining us tonight for Canton Confidential. Testimony resumes tomorrow at 9 a.m. in Dedham.
And you can find us back here for more special coverage and analysis tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.